Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is sponsored by
Tepi, who's a new listener to the show. She wanted to shout out an Indiegogo campaign to get wheelchairs to disabled children in schools in Gaza.
What's interesting about this is that, in this episode, we talked to M-1 from Dead Prez, and he actually went to Gaza, and we talked about it.
So totally check out this campaign. The doctor that's involved, he practices emergency medicine in Gaza, and his goal is to just save lives in the community. It's not a front for any organization. It's just really to help kids who are in a shitty place during a shitty time.
Little sidebar here. There's an amazing documentary called Death in Gaza. I highly recommend it. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. Go check out the campaign. It's linked to in the show notes. And, help support the people.
If you'd like to sponsor an episode, all we ask from you is to donate at least $10. That's about how much it costs us to make each episode for you. So that's all that we ask.
WhishSidePodcast.com.
Click on the donate tab.
This is episode 125.
Yeah, we talked to M-1 from Dead Prez.
We caught up with him in a cab on the way to the airport. So there's a little bit of, cabbiness going on in there. There's a little bit of, connection issues. So just suffer through it because it's totally worth it.
It's a little bit shorter than normal, too, because of that.
Yeah, just because of that. But we're totally stoked to have him on. So stay tuned for that. Hey, Jordan, what news and events do we have going on this week?
Well, if you haven't heard yet, AK Press recently suffered damages from a fire that happened nearby.
Yeah, the pictures are horrendous, man.
And so right now they're red flag from their building, and they really need your help to get back up on their feet.
And it's not just them. Like, what they're doing is they're helping everyone who's being affected.
Everyone in that same building.
And the
building next door. Mm-hmm. Actually, it took 2 people's lives. And so it was a pretty bad fire.
Yeah, I got the email. And I was like, oh, shit. I get my heart sunk.
Mm-hmm. So definitely help them out. We'll link to that in the show notes. And do what you can.
For the slingshot this week, April 3rd, 1969. There were riots in black neighborhoods of Chicago in response to police brutality.
That sounds like it could have happened last week.
It did happen last week. Police brutality part, at least. It happens every goddamn day. If you like these little tidbits of history, I pulled them out of the Slingshot Personal Organizer. You can get one yourself at a local info shop or an online info shop like AK Press. Who needs your help right now anyways? I sincerely hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Hello?
Hey, man, how are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Good. Sorry for being a few minutes late on this call.
No worries.
Oh, no, thanks for getting on. Since we only have you for a short time, you mind if we just jump right into it?
Yeah, we can. And I want to say that I said a short time to Cynthia and Jillian because I'm in a cab and I'm on my way to the airport, but it doesn't have to be 15 minutes. It could be feasibly longer. So just, I just want to let you know it could be longer than 15.
Oh, well, we'll take you as long as you'll let us. How's that?
All right, no problem.
Well, let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
Usually we try to keep it really relaxed and hanging out and more just a flowing conversation, but since you have a little bit of time, we'll just jump right into some questions.
Okay.
I one time heard you say that your career is revolution, and I kind of would like to say that I do feel the same way about myself, being a vegan anarchist and trying to push revolutionary politics and ideals. How do you feel about your career being that revolution? Do you still feel that way?
I feel like you can have many jobs. You could be a teacher or a janitor. You could be a philosopher or a drug dealer as a revolutionary. And in that way, we're not anchored or defined by, what keeps us busy day to day. There's an overarching goal that we can stay, attached to, no matter what day of the week it is. And so, even as an MC, and what I've been doing for the last 20 or so years, has helped me to understand the task of creating revolutionary culture, because such is the task of an artist inside the revolution, to create revolutionary culture. So yes, I still feel the same way today as I felt when I made that statement.
So you often talk about revolution in your songs. So what exactly does revolution mean to you?
Well, to me, revolution means a complete change of hands of power from the state to the people. Compromise. This is with the understanding that there's a historical analysis that goes with oppression, and the only way to remedy what capitalism and imperialism has brought to the game is by a total transfer of power into those hands, non-criminal, non-violating, non-bloody hands of the oppressed people.
Do you feel that the critique of capitalism gets downplayed in a lot of arts?
Well, yeah, and everywhere, because capitalism holds sway worldwide. Capitalism and its ideology run rampant throughout every single strain of everything I see, from fashion to the way cars are designed, why radio is the way they are, the influence of music to where it is today. I don't think there would be like a per se like trap rapper if it weren't for a more capitalist driven ideology like the Jeezys and even Jay-Z, but Jay-Z has more consciousness. I mean, the out and out exploitive idea, that we can benefit from just driving capitalism forward. And that's like, the drug dealing, I get money, that. And so, definitely, I think there's been a lack of critique because there's a lack of revolutionaries.
How do you try to fight capitalism in your day-to-day life?
Well, the system holds hegemony. It is a system that is pretty much in control. With little resistance, there's very little fight back. And so, for me, what I try to do is build ideas that are anti-capitalist ideas. One where we exchange goods and services, or trade the use goods and services without having it doesn't involve money, or maybe it can be anything to undermine what the traditional capitalist model is. And so sometimes that does boil down to organizing people in organizations to do things like clothing drives where we can defeat like the mongering branding of clothing, and it's all the high prices driven high by this like intangible idea of like clothing brands, and we do clothing drives or things of that nature. Realistically, what it's going to take is a new government, which undermines it. And from a revolutionary perspective, those in organizations who do that by having meetings on a daily basis, who begin to organize larger amounts of people who then want to participate, and then who trade our goods and services together in that way, band ourselves together so that when surges in capitalism are made, we are there to resist it, or show how bad it is that it will be for the majority of the people. It's a dual process because you have to live inside capitalism at the same time that you build something that is a better model. For me, as an African, it makes much more sense because capitalism was built off the backs of African enslavement. So therefore, it makes sense for me. It also makes sense for the rest of the world and Europeans as well, because capitalism was born moribund. It was born a system which eats itself. I would rather be a part of a system that was more progressive and profound in the way that it treats the people or the colonial its subjects. And so that to me has those little details of it and the way that's broken down have to be done in order for us to talk about battling and in a dual way. I got to buy their gas because I have a car, and I have to buy, the things that it takes. You won't find me doing any super hyper capitalist spending. I'm not trying to buy a diamond or a Bentley or none of that. But I have to live in the meanwhile and create dual power, which means socialism from below and destroying imperialism from above.
How do you deal with like capitalism within like the hip hop culture? A lot of times, it's very inherent. If you know what I'm saying.
I do. It's the same. It's not like capitalism in hip hop culture is different than capitalism in the music industry. I mean, in the movie industry or the fashion industry. Or in any other industry. So, yes, there's what music does is carry the ideology of capitalism. Without music, people wouldn't feel the same way about buying and driving the system forward. People are proud to have on a Gucci belt or have on, have a brand new car, or these things. Which are material, accoutrements that come with that model. Like, that's the thing about music. And so it's like, it's conscious. Or, I'm sorry, did I get cut off? I forgot. Where did I get cut off at?
I don't even remember, but we'll just jump into something else. I wanted to say about the year 2000, I was, organizing a protest, and they were making banners, and somebody put on Let's Get Free. And it was the first time that I had heard music that like spoke to me that wasn't from like the punk hardcore scene. It was, politically driven, and it completely opened up my world as far as like me realizing I have been pigeonholing myself for so long. So I just want to say thank you for that, because like it was a huge eye opening for me, because it was just opened my eyes to how I really closed off myself to the outside world.
Wow. Well, thank you, and I'm glad. For a lot of people, hearing "Let's Get Free" was evidence that hip hop didn't have to be limited in that way, and so I have been expressed that to by members of the hardcore punk scene that for them the debut album "Let's Get Free" represented to them the same thing that they were going through and listening to with punk rock music. So it's cool to hear you echo that sentiment as well. And we were trying to make music that was not in one genre.
Earlier, you got a chance to go to the Gaza and Palestine. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was in Gaza in I want to say maybe 2009 or 10. I can't remember.
So would you mind telling us kind of like how you were able to do that and kind of like what the whole idea was?
Well, and when going to Gaza, I have been doing work inside the United States, and there was a recent siege against Palestine by Israel. So in order to join it, I joined the protest. I had done some fundraisers in New York City, and some of the people I knew were Palestinian were going to join a full kind of like a movement headed toward Gaza, and to bring humanitarian aid. It was called Viva Palestina. It was a convoy of many organizations meeting in Egypt, and then driving all of the up to the border, and then spending some time in Gaza. And some people would be reunited with their families, and the mission had many purposes. But I went there as a delegate or a member of the organization Existence is Resistance, which is out of New York, a Palestinian organization. And it's from there. Through that organization, I learned a lot about, I learned a lot in that way because I learned about different organizations and how these different organizations work together. And that there are different kinds of anti-Zionist people. There were some Orthodox Jews. There were young people, old people, and even rappers. I met the rapper Low Key on that same trip, and a couple of rappers as well. So it was my first attempt to get to Palestine, and like I said, that was one of the most eye-opening trips that I had ever taken.
What was so eye-opening about it?
Internationally, how forces attempt to prevent the aid of Palestine, not only the Egyptian government, but with help from Israel and the United States, made it very hard for us to penetrate, those borders. I was able to see like the international bureaucracy firsthand work. You know what I mean?
Recently, you were denied entry in Canada. Can you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, the Canadian border has always been one that has been hard to penetrate, but because kind of like randomly, they have denied access to members of the United States who may have had use a random selection as to what they sometimes deny entry or access for. I've been allowed in Canada many times, but sometimes I am denied entry, and it's not the first time that's happened. And although I hope it will be the last.
I was denied once just for having animal rights literature in my car.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Some of the people I know have been denied because of the literature they were carrying as well.
It's crazy.
Yep, it is crazy. It's pretty crazy.
So I did want to talk about one thing before you take off, and that's how we can be white allies in the Black Liberation Movement. Okay. So, yeah.
Well, you surely can fight for international African power. And I think that's the most important thing to talk about, actually, because if we're talking about African power, we can consolidate the effort to unite against imperialism. Imperialism was born from African power, the exploitation of African people. So we can, with the help of the rest of the colonial subjects and people who understand that the edifice of the system was built wrong, everybody has a place to play in it. Not just Black people or African people. We just happen to be the subject of this particular problem. But it's not subjective. It's not personal. We all have a role to play. And so I have, for many years, worked with white people who have supported Black power in many ways. There's an organization called the African People's Solidarity Committee, APSC. And that organization was created by the African People's Solidarity Party, African People's Socialist Party. And so there are some white people who I've seen associated with this organization who are longer and harder than Black people have. There's a very important book called Culture of Violence, or The Culture of Violence, which was written by a woman named Penny Hess. I'll call her Comrade Penny Hess, because she is a comrade. When we fight together against imperialism, we become comrades, whether white or regardless of skin color. And so there are many fierce anti-imperialist subjects. This isn't even a a new concept. The concept actually is age old when we talk about solidarity. Even during the 60s with Fred Hampton, who was far ahead of his time, talked about mother country radicals. And mother country radicals are people who we called North Americans, or the white people who obviously weren't African, but who took a radical stance, against capitalism. So a lot of that has to do with informing the white community about what capitalism means and the ills of capitalism, and how we can ultimately form a solidarity African power organizations. You know what I mean? And a lot of that is really basic, because we lack resources, and Africa has been the chief resource that built America. And so then the benefactors of that wealth have been white people, or and not in a subjective way, but in general have been the white public. So we would like to turn around the relationship and be able to build our resources, which has also come in the form of technology and other ways that, in general, the white world has benefited, while black people have, been subjugated to taking 3 steps backwards, while the rest of the world has taken 3 steps forward. And so we want to remedy that. And it's important that white people can strike a tremendous blow by doing that, because this is where the resources have landed. So that's where we are. So I think that's what we can do, man.
What how do you feel the reaction has been to the Black Lives Matter campaign and the reactions across the country because of it?
Well, I think the more atrocities and tragedies that happen to us, the more people are awakened. Black Lives Matter is important because it's instituted now. But Black lives have been mattering, and there have been many organizations that have come forward at the instance when there were so many tragedies and so many things that have happened. So I'm glad to see new activists. I'm glad to see newer generations of revolutionaries. But we're still dealing with the same old problem. And so that's why I'm glad to see Black Lives Matter, and I think instead of it becoming like this kind of catchphrase, I would like for Black to become this kind of a transition organization to create more informed revolutionaries who have done political study.
Yeah, would you mind talking about your views on including animal exploitation in the end of capitalism?
Well, I definitely got a point that everything is political. So, the earth gets exploited by capitalism the same way its people do, including the animals that are on the earth. So, we want to talk about food. We want to talk about this whole system that works together. We are one organism. So I don't single out the animals as more special than the plants or the earth or the people. We all are a part of this one contradiction that, if remedied in this primary way, you save it all. You then are fighting for a revolution. Saves the whales. Saves. It puts the exploitation of animals for food on its right side. It lets people for sport. It is. It becomes a whole other platform. So like I said, I think that, along with a lot of other things, become the primary contradiction of capitalism. And then you solve the rest of the world's problems. If you solve the problems of basically, essentially the African, you solve the world's problems.
Would you mind going into kind of what that catalyst was that kind of radicalized you?
Growing up poor, wondering why I had to be without everything. Why I had to grow up, in poverty. These questions had real answers that people couldn't give me for the longest time. It's just kind of the way it was. And some of my friends ended up in prison, including my mom. And that made me understand it in even a deeper way of the exploitation. And so from there, my commitment became really high to understanding the system and tearing it apart.
You kind of brought up the prison industrial complex. Would you mind like going into, you know, your stance on the prison industrial complex and maybe how we can work together to try to abolish it?
Well, since the name prison industrial complex was invented, the ideas of prisons have become even more, insidious. With the privatization of prison, with the globalization of the idea of prisons, there is, has emerged what has become obvious is the objective, and the objective is population control. So, with that being said, it's more glaring than ever that we can look at them using prison and jails and detention as the solution to the growing problem of colonial, like the colonial subject trying to fight against oppression. And so, I think that's how it's got to be seen. If we don't see it that way, or have that perspective, then we lose the ability to fight it in the fiercest kind of way. We just think, we were unlucky, so we went to prison, or life is just hard. And these are completely concocted. Everything around us, the construct of this same kind of oppressive mechanism. I was raised in projects that look exactly like prisons, and that's not by coincidence. That's because they want to get the colonial subject used to living in what looks like a prison environment. So yeah, I think more than anything, the idea has to be put out there in a more pervasive approach that we can defeat the prison industrial complex by recognizing that we are living in a prison without walls everywhere around us, and especially when it comes to the physical exploitation, then it's hard to do because ultimately the owners of the prisons are the people who own everything else, and to fight against the prisons is almost like fighting against the grocery stores and the schools. Mm-hmm. And then you end up kind of feeling hopeless because you want to go against, what I call a tank with a shank, or go open up the prison doors or battle to open up the prison doors. But it's just as clear as day is we have to recognize where that problem is, what it is. And so we can see it exactly what it is. It's a warehousing of human beings,
And so there's a lot of great organizations like Anarchist Black Cross and Jericho that help with prisoner support. What are other great ways to help our friends that are behind bars?
Well, we can create prison support organizations. We can write letters to our brothers and sisters who are locked up behind enemy lines. And in turn, what that would do is allow them to have a voice that can be heard by other people than their captors, and we can fight for prison rights organizations and committees, and I think that will do a lot in the way of representing people who have been wronged by the system in a political way. We could highlight their names and talk about their atrocities so that people can see, just like the unjust way that the system or the prisons work. We can call out names like Mumia, Abu-Jamal, and talk about their fights. We can talk about Mutulu Shakur and Ruchelle McGee and Herman Bell and the rest of many political prisoners, Leonard Peltier, who we can use their cases as glaring examples of how the prison is used to deter resistance. not only what they call crime, but resistance. And so, yeah, I think, like I said, it's all about the perspective and how you view it.
Would you recommend any good reading for our listeners as far as like how they can radicalize themselves some more, or get more educated about issues?
Wow. Yes, I can. He's an author as well as a political prisoner. So Mumia Abu-Jamal has recently released a book called Jailhouse Lawyer. And he has many books as well. But definitely check out that book. I think it hit me in a place that it just was a telling tale. There is like, to me, what I call required reading, of people who are like political prisoners, like advanced thinkers, like George Jackson, who wrote the book "The Dragon is Coming." I think it's a great glimpse into like revolutionary theory from the point of view of a so-called political prisoner. Yeah. So, what else? I would look at. Oh wow. Jawanza Kunjufu, Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. I would look at a book called They Will Shoot Back by a brother named Akinyele. He's a OG who lives in Atlanta, former Black Panther. It's called They Will Shoot Back. Let me say, Jamal Joseph has written a book. He's a former Black Panther who lives in Harlem, Jamal Joseph. And that book is called, I can't remember the title right now. Richard A. Denis wrote a book called The War Against All Puerto Ricans. That's a good book. There's a book on the Young Lord Party called They Took the Streets. That needs to be read. Let me see. Read anything that comes from the Burning Spear, which is mainly a lot of the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party is one of the main contributors, and his name is Omali Ishatella. And so read all of his books. They are incredible political analysis and ways to get into real action. I don't know. I can continue on. There's like, there's Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow. She a new, from a legal perspective about exactly what the book kind of states. It's called The New Jim Crow. What else? Yeah, I'll stop right there.
Well, thank you. We try to end every interview saying "fuck, shit, damn." Would you mind saying it for us this week?
Of course. Fuck, shit, damn.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope you get your flight.
Well, I hope so too.
Okay, have a good one.
Have a good night.
All right, bye.
Bye. This week you heard
Hell Yeah by Dead Prez.
And right now you're listening to
Police State by Dead Prez.
There's a little theme going on there. But iTunes, we need ratings and reviews. Just go do it. If you've done it, high five to you. If you haven't, why the fuck not? Get off your ass and do it. It's pretty simple. You open up your iTunes app on your phone, or you open up iTunes on your computer. You look up our show, click on write a review, click 5 stars, write I'm writing a motherfucking review, and you hit post.
Also, if you've already reviewed and subscribed to our show, grab a friend's phone, go to the local grocery store, if they sell phones there.
The first person that posts a review that simply says, I stole someone's phone, I'm posting this review under their name, we'll send a free DVD too.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And if you go subscribe, take a picture of it, let us know, and we will send you a membership.
Yep.
Why not?
Yeah, first one. Free DVD. You got a free DVD coming.
Animal rights DVD.
Oh, we have to be specific about what it was?
No, we don't.
I can't just send Legally Blonde?
You could.
It's animal rights, right?
Yeah.
Don't they go to Vivisexy on that one? Or is that the second one?
I don't remember. I've never seen them.
What?
If you haven't yet, totally follow us on blah, 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 blah. If you haven't yet liked us or become friends with us on social media, you should do so. We often post things on there that we don't talk about on the show. And so, yeah, go to whichsidepodcast.com, click social.
Fuck shit down.
We need a social media intern to join our team. If interested in becoming activist famous or a level 5 vegan, hit us up on social media. Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.